Senior advisor to the president, Gene Sperling. Gene, welcome back. Very good to have you with us today. You know, when you look at the reaction to these numbers, the question that keeps coming up again and again is that the messages that we've received from all levels of the White House and Treasury have been wrong. So how did you all get this so wrong?
Well, Martha, the things that the White House and the Treasury Department were saying last year, and I can't stress this enough, reflected the overwhelming economic consensus in the private sector in the U.S. and other places around the world. It wasn't that people were wrong with the facts they had. It's that things happened after that that affected the outcome. So we had not just Delta, but then Omicron. We had gas prices at $3.31 on January 17th when Putin first started doing military exercises in Belarus.
Understood, Gene, but with all due respect, let's put this graphic up that shows the month-by-month inflation gain, right? So while this was happening, we're going to put this on the screen, wouldn't it have been wise at this point to shift your strategy? Because this is a really pretty clear chart at where things were going. And with all due respect, again, you know, you guys are the folks who are elected and appointed to these positions because you're supposed to be the best at sort of figuring out what's coming around the bend.
Well, what you saw is that when Delta hit, a lot of the different things that we were hoping, and not just us, but literally every major forecaster in the world was predicting that the supply constraints would ease up. We all saw what happened after that. We saw lockdowns in China. We saw semiconductor constraints happen, and those ended up meaning that the supply constraints that affected cost, inflation, affected us worldwide.
So let me ask you this.
And then you got hit. Excuse me, let me just finish. And then you got hit with what is driving the prices a lot today, which are higher energy prices. Now, just remember, global inflation right now in the 38 major countries in the OECD is 9.6%. It is 9% in the UK. This is a global phenomenon, and it has happened with unexpected aftershocks from the pandemic
and an unthinkable war of aggression. Because, you know, I understand what you're saying. So my question to you is, when you saw that was happening, right? So Delta starts to hit. We've got a couple $1 trillion in stimulus that has gone in. So we're seeing an increase in demand based on that, and you see the supply chain start to dry up. So why didn't that set off inflation alarm bells and say, we got to pull back, we've got to pull back on the stimulus, and we maybe have to start to increase interest rates here? That message could have come from the Fed. So you had a lot of warning with the things that you're talking about, and we were told, oh, it's just going to be over by the end of the year, it's going to be over in a couple of months. But none of that turned out to be true, based on all the things that we all could see.
No, actually, that's not right. And I will tell you again that in June, July, people did not see the impact of Delta. They did not see the impact of Omicron. They did not see the impact that there would be this type of unthinkable war. And as that happened, everybody in the world has had to deal with this. And the United States, if you were paying attention, President Biden was on it fast with a supply chain task force. You remember all the issues about would the stocks not be bare, would shelves be bare for Christmas, all the work in the ports, all the work on the supply chains. And what you've seen is that the deficit has come down a record $1.7 trillion.
That doesn't seem to be making people feel better, though, Gene, because you've got a 70% disapproval on the president's handling of the economy. So you're telling me why everybody should feel better, but I'm telling you that when you look at the polling—
You know what I'm actually trying to do? You know what I'm actually trying to do is answer the very question you asked. You asked about, did you pull back on spending? I'm sorry, that's the question you asked me. And I said, we then had a plan of which $1.7 trillion deficit went down. Some of that was the surge of revenues from stronger growth due to the American Rescue Plan, but most of it was through less spending. That's the issue you raised, and I wanted to raise that is what has happened this year.
A lot of economists—
Record $1.7 trillion deficit reduction.
So let's talk about what happens now, okay? Because now there's discussion about more spending through a new version of BBB and perhaps tax increases on something that would impact perhaps $1 trillion to $1.3 trillion that would hit small businesses around the country. Is that what you're supporting? Because I'm going to talk to Mitch McConnell in a moment, and I'd like to know, what you'd like to say to him about this. Why do you think that would be a good idea at this point, to put tax to raise taxes on businesses in this country at this fragile moment in the economy?
Well, the right description of this is you're taking several efforts that would actually reduce prices for people, like on prescription drugs, which is a key issue for seniors, utilities, premiums. We could have a federal gas tax holiday, and that could lower gas taxes and prices by another 18 cents a barrel. These are things we do, and you have taxes on the very most well-off corporations and billionaires and people with over $100 million. That is to make sure that you are giving this relief to Americans in a way that is not inflationary. And what I would say to Leader McConnell, who I've worked with before, is that I think when we work together, we can do some positive things. One example is in the bipartisan infrastructure deal, we were able to give relief to internet for internet, and now a lot of people are getting nearly free internet. That was where we worked together and we lowered prices and costs for American families. We can solve this if we work together on things like prescription drugs, on utility, on energy costs, on a federal tax holiday.
Let me ask you this: when you look forward, because a number of the things that you named, to be fair, I understand that that's your perspective as an economist, that those things would help. You know that there are people on the other side of the equation who would say you start a gas tax holiday and other things, you're going to stimulate demand more, and they believe that that will keep us in this situation for a while. So let me ask you this question. Do you believe that inflation has peaked? And do you believe that we're going to see a number in this second quarter that's going to put us into an actual technical definition recession?
So in terms of inflation, I'm glad you raised this, because the one thing these current inflation numbers don't fully account for is how much gas prices have already dropped. They are now down 42, 43 cents, and that is not fully reflected in the inflation prices that we've seen. Are they going to keep
going in that direction,
So if it did fully, I sure hope so. It's hard to make, forecasts, but the president is still doing the Strategic Petroleum Reserve release of 1 million a day. He's encouraging 60 million more from our peers. He is pushing refineries to open up more refinery capacity. He is pushing major gas companies to make sure that when oil prices are down, that is reflected in the pump. And again, he has called for a federal and a state gas tax holiday. All of those things could make a very big impression. We already have 10,000 gas stations right now that are under $4 a gallon.
But we're seeing that a lot of the core prices on rent and food and other things outside of energy are putting a lot of pressure on people's discretionary income. So all of that is a problem. Do you believe that we have peaked, that this problem has peaked, and that things are starting to improve, and that we are not going to be in a recession? Can you just answer that for me briefly, if you could, sir?
I believe the fact that we've had 1 million jobs created over the last 3 months, 372,000 jobs created with this month, is not consistent with what one thinks of when you think of a downturn. 1 million jobs over the last 3 quarters shows a strong job market. I do think there are lots of signs, as we said, that gas prices and energy prices are coming down. That's what we hope. That seems like a reasonable thing to project. But again, it's a very uncertain world, and it's very hard to make firm predictions for me or for anyone.
Those are the hopes right now, and we certainly hope that turns out to be a strategy that works. Gene Sperling, thank you very much. Obviously, serious times and a lot of pressures on everybody, so we do appreciate your time, and I'm glad our audio didn't break up this time, so I appreciate you coming back. Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.